So, welcome to another edition of Corporate Elements, where we talk about everything under the sun related to everything corporate, be it HR, be it leadership. So, here we are with another episode today where we'll be discussing a lot about performance review. So, we are joined by Dimple, who is a seasoned HR professional, and we are here with Jess, who has had a lot of experience in setting up the HR and literally running the whole organization.
Yeah, definitely. This conversation is going to spark debate in every office, I guess, because as you mentioned, we are doing performance review, and there has always been this understanding that is it just a number games or is it a way to measure fairness? And with two guests, one from HR and one Jess, who is a seasoned manager, and she has been through good and bad, and she has been on the side of these controversial reviews. I think it's going to be great. So maybe we can start. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Jess.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jess. I've been part of this corporate structure since almost 16 years, and 13 years I've been part of the performance review process. So I think I'm really excited to be part of this discussion, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And there are some burning questions I have, and I'm not saying it's a personal questions, but this is just that which has been bothering me for a while, and maybe I'm happy that you're here so we can address them. And over to you, Dimple.
Hi, my name is Dimple, and I have been in HR for almost 11 plus years. And I have, primarily done talent acquisition. I've been here earlier. I've spoken to you guys about talent acquisition. Today, we're gonna, put more light on performance management and performance reviews.
Yeah. So, if we have to just kickstart, from your perspective, how the whole process starts, how it evolves, and what have been the mechanisms of how you have dealt with in your history of or line of work, basically.
So more or less, the company so far I've worked with, they have had their own performance reviews set up for all teams, for all departments, functions across. More or less, it is, an annual exercise for the companies to understand, where the productivity stands of the organization, what they can do better. And it's also about rewarding employees, work they've done throughout the year. That's one. And obviously, basis of the reviews that happen, the annual reviews, the ratings and stuff is decided, increments, promotions, etc. are decided. So that's how the process has been largely. And it can be two ways sometimes, or in a few cases it can be the self-rating and stuff is given.
See, it's completely agreed that the whole shebang of how it works, but how it started, when you guys started off in your respective line of work. So how it evolved, or how has it been going?
Basically, we want to understand what are the type of performance review. Okay, there are annual performance review, and there are real time feedback. I know when I started my career, I've been through 360-degree feedback where people were commenting on the hairstyles also. And I was new. I really didn't understand what was that. So basically, maybe you can give a little bit information on that. But what are the types of performance review?
See, if you ask me, in an ideal world, when I started the career, when I heard from people as to how this entire process works, be it from HR, because when I started the organization, we were hardly 250, 300 people. We never really had a structure at that point of time. Mm-hmm. And then when we grew into 7,000, 8,000 people, that's when the structure got added. Okay. So performance review is not a one-time activity. It is something that is supposed to happen throughout the year. That means, for example, if you have a Jan to December cycle, you're supposed to have regular catch-ups with your manager to understand how you're performing. First of all, the first thing is to agree the goals, okay? What exactly are you intending to achieve this year? And what are the basics that you need to achieve that will give you maybe meeting expectation kind of a rating? And what are the additional things that you need to achieve so that you get a standout or an exceptional rating? That is something which is very primary and has to be done during the start of the year. And then during the year, you will have catch-ups to understand, are you at par or, you're away from the goals? Is there any problem? Do you need any support from your manager? All that has to happen throughout the year. And then when you reach almost at the end of the quarter, then there's a process of self-appraisal where people update their comments in terms of how do they think they have performed. Ideally, managers are supposed to review whatever comments people have updated and do their own assessment and submit the rating to HR, which then again, goes through the organization process of reviewing the ratings that has been submitted. And then I think the rating gets approved. Accordingly, a pot is aligned or assigned to each of the teams, be it for increment and for bonus, depending upon how the company has performed. That happens till end of the year. And then, for example, in our organization, then maybe when the new year is in January, we get the final bonus amount and increment amount, and then we sit for discussion with people. Okay, now this is how the ideal world looks like. Now, even in like big organizations, from team to team, from manager to manager, this process gets diluted. Okay, because the HR on top will give you instruction that this is how we want to do it, but they can't dictate what kind of conversation you're going to have with your manager.
Correct.
Okay, because it's not recorded, it's not official. So it can go from a very serious conversation where both of you are equally invested in, in career and want to see the person who's getting reviewed grow. So you will give some valuable feedback so that the person works on it. Or it can be as stupid as, your hairstyle or dressing. And you'll talk about everything except for work. Okay, because sometimes even the manager is not clear in terms of what the person has done. So the conversation is going to be scattered. They'll talk about all those things except for the main discussion. Or sometimes, I think it also happens, it depends on the experience that your manager carries when it comes to all this conversation. You need a certain kind of emotional maturity to have career discussions. There are people who are maybe technically really good, but not a people manager. Okay, they don't know how this conversation works. So they'll talk about everything, but they'll talk about process. Okay, now I'm talking this from experience. I've had managers who will talk everything from the process. This you've done well, this you haven't done. But there's no career discussion. For me, performance review is like catch-ups that we have throughout the year. We have discussed the errors, we have discussed the misses. But at the end of the year, I just don't want to focus on things that I haven't done. I also want to know that if I have to move from this position to another, okay, because I'm ambitious, so I'm always looking forward. That's okay, what's next? You can't change your past, right? So there has to be some feed forward also. That what do I need to do to reach from level A to level B? That conversation should happen during performance reviews. So if you guys are having conversation with your managers and there's no discussion about the future, for me, that's not performance review.
It's just a number game.
Yeah, ideally it should be 25% past because we've already discussed that during the year. And then 75% about future in terms of what do we want to do, where do I want to reach, and how is my manager going to support me to reach there. If we are not covering these three things, then it's just a jazz. It's not a future, performance review for me.
Also, I feel that majority of the organizations, so we assume, or in this whole conversation, we assuming that they are having a conversation on a monthly or a weekly basis or a quarterly basis. But a lot of these organizations are so big sometimes, it may be a very tough challenge for them to even do a 6-monthly review, right? So I feel that here the assumption is that at least they have had a conversation 2-3 times. So then the performance review is effective, is what I feel.
Yeah.
But if you're meeting directly at the performance review, I think that is the most ineffective and futile conversation at that point of time. Because if you're saying that, oh, I have only one day in a whole year to talk to you, and obviously that conversation will be so fast that as an employee, you would not know what hit you. So for an effective performance review, as you just said, that your past conversations should go on. And on the performance review day, you talk about 25% about your past and then 75% what can we do to make it a much better experience in future.
Because you focus on the point of growth and goal. And 75% if you're moving forward, you also need to look at the areas of improvement. Okay. So Jess, what is your own mechanism of like having these discussions with empathy and, with a fairness review?
See, as part of the performance review process, I prefer having regular check-ins with my people, okay? And I'm very direct when it comes to giving feedback or telling them where exactly are they going wrong or what have they done well. For me, both are very clear in same tone. Personally, I've tried to tone down over the years. But I feel if someone has done really well, you need to tell them instantly. If they've done something wrong, you tell them instantly. so that you give them enough time to correct themselves. Keeping that conversation or parking it till appraisal doesn't make any sense, because then they've lost opportunity to work on it. If I'm giving someone feedback in Jan and I see improvement in April, for me, the work is done. I don't have to repeat it in December. Okay. Your tone and everything can be managed, but I think telling the person at that point of time, for me, that is really important, because then I feel that the person has the capability to improve. Okay. And I'm trusting them. And that's the reason I'm having the conversation. I'm spending time with them. But it has, see, I'll be honest, it has also happened that when you work with someone over the years, they don't really bother and they're not going to improve. So you will also not waste your time telling them, because there's going to be no results out of it. So I have had as a manager, you decide where do you want to invest your time. I've had people with whom I've given them feedback at that very time. And with others, though I've given, sometimes you tone it down because it's not going to work. You don't want to unnecessarily invest your energy. That has happened throughout the year.
To add to that, Jess, I just want to understand your perspective here. I have seen, when you said that people don't improve and feedback is given at the end of the year. But today, in today's, so to say, VUCA world, are we still living with that? I don't think so. From, the amount of experience I have had, different companies, everybody has had this feedback mechanism, which is monthly. And monthly check-ins is something that is, that's a part of the corporate life today, is what I have also experienced. So, today this is happening and practiced very diligently in companies that I have worked with. So this is my view. You can correct me.
Would personally not agree that it happens diligently. For example, where I come from or people with whom I've worked with, I know it is encouraged that you do it on monthly basis, quarterly basis for maybe higher management, because it's not possible. It also depends on the span, right? If you have 3-4 people, it's easy to sit and have conversation. But if you have 18 people, 1:18, having conversation with 18 people is not easy, okay? It takes toll on your mental health also, because you're repeating the same thing. I have been on the other side of the fence, so I know there have been times when I've been frustrated, because you keep on having the same conversation. They're not listening. So you tend to, by the time you're done with one cycle, then you're like, let's just miss second one, because there's nothing new to discuss. I just had a discussion. So
and
you might just skip 1 month.
It would be like hardly 2 or 3 weeks, then you again start the same whole process if it is a monthly thing.
Yeah. So it doesn't really happen that way. Okay. I think you need to be, if you really want to have meaningful conversation, then you need to be proactive and
getting it.
Block your manager's calendar.
Which rarely happens.
See, I think it depends. For example, I am that kind of a person who would do that, because I don't want to hear anything in December. I would even upfront just tell them that what were you doing throughout the year. If you're telling me now, then I'm not taking that feedback. I've done that.
Yes.
Okay. Alternatively, it may also happen that your manager is trying to avoid you. Okay. See, it's not easy to give feedback. Sometimes there are people who don't like confrontation, because sometimes these discussions can lead to confrontations that I don't think you never told me.
Yeah, it also matters that if the person is introvert, for example, your manager is introvert and he needs some time to prepare. So he will only have those fixed conversations probably in 3 months or 6 months probably.
Yeah, but if you're on the other side, you can definitely question.
Yes.
Even a well-established process, if things are like pretty standard, and if you're doing same thing again and again, and there's no space for innovation, so you might as well skip all the reviews throughout the year. But if you're a proactive person and if you're doing things and if you really find space for it, then even if it's a manager is introvert, that's his or her problem maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good excuse that I'm introvert, so I don't really speak a lot. I'm extrovert, so excuse if I spoke extra today. If you are a manager, then you need to learn to balance. Or don't apply for those positions, because you can't be in that position of importance and then give me this lame excuse. You need to learn to tone it down and come to the exact point where we are able to have a proper, mature conversation.
I think this one thing struck a new conversation line is when you said that, I feel if a person is not doing well in January and if I give him a feedback and probably by April, he's doing better. So what if he doesn't do better? Then it sparks the next question, performance improvement. So that awkward conversation of how to improve.
From you, we understand that you're quite clear in your discussions and you know what you want and you know how to get things done also. But like you also mentioned that having all these things set up with a person, like giving so many opportunities and having constructive feedback still is not improving, then what about this process improvement plan that you ever exercised it? Like, is it genuinely meant to support people or give them opportunity to come out of it?
I've dealt with many cases, okay, in my career where I've had performance improvement discussions with people. Many translated into them improving their performance, and there are people who have exited through the process also, and there are some people who decided they don't want to opt for it. So there's a choice, right, when it comes to performance improvement. So for example, the scenario that you spoke about, that we give them feedback in Jan and they did not show any improvement in April, so you're going to give them feedback. It won't really initiate performance discussion that early. It takes time, okay? You at least have to give them 6 months time. Corporate, it depends on the organization that you're part of, okay? So for me, if, for example, I have worked with the most employee-friendliest organization ever existed on Earth, okay? That means you have to give them number of attempts to make sure that they improve and work on it. You have to document all the feedbacks. That means there's going to be a number of conversation with the person and manager documenting everything. And the person, it has to be sent to the person. After a few conversation, HR is looped in so that they are also aware and we're not trying to play with someone's career. All that happens. So it's very documented process and you have to prove they've done everything from your end. And then you also have to explain them the process of how the performance improvement plan works. Okay, that
To
what
an
will
employee.
happen to the employee, to tell them that there'll be an informal process. Okay, and if they are not able to come out of it, then the formal process starts. And at the end of
What
the
is the formal
process,
process?
so formal process is that you will get around 8 weeks. Okay, and you'll be within that 8 weeks. If we feel that there's no improvement, then they will have to resign.
By themselves.
Yeah, they'll have to resign by themselves, and then they serve notice and leave. So it's when it comes to performance improvement plan, I think they get enough chance to prove themselves. There's informal for 6 weeks, there's formal for 8 weeks, and then you serve the notice. So if you feel, see, I feel that if you're not able to perform in one job, it's not end of the world. Okay, I've seen people who haven't really done well in my team, but they've gone out, moved to different industry, and they've done really well. So it depends on how do you take it. If you put it that my manager is against me, it may also happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It also happens that sometimes you just don't really like the person. Okay. So you want to find out opportunities to move. But I think you need to be selfish and figure out that are you struggling with the process or with the person? You really need to be lucky to find managers who are very clear that they are not after you.
Yes.
Taking a step back, if I am reporting to you and I realize that I'm not good at it, I'm incompetent. Okay. So you must have interviewed me earlier. And during that discussion, I might have lied. Okay. So it boils down to the point that 6 months I've been like just acting. I've been like fooling myself and everyone. How do you manage like such part? Because it comes back to like the hiring process where HR is also involved.
See, when it comes to hiring, there are a lot of decisions that you take. It may or may not necessarily be about the skill set or the experience. Sometimes, you just take an emotional decision because the other person needs the job. Okay. And you feel that if someone is in need of job, so even if they don't have the skill set, they'll come up the mark. You can teach them the process. I'm not into rocket science or, some technical stuffs that I can't teach. You can learn it. You can learn while you're doing the job. Okay. And then progress. And I've seen so many examples of people on whom I've taken chances and they've really, proved themselves. It has happened. There are some people who were really skilled and we hired and we thought that, 2 weeks or 3 months of training and they'll be there. But it doesn't happen. But then that's why you have a probation process, right? So you don't confirm them. And I have done that also.
Yeah.
That means by the time it's 3.5, 4 months and there's no progress, 13 days, we have 90 days catch up with the individual to tell them how they're doing. By 4th month, we tell them that if there's no progress, we are not going to confirm them. That means by the end of 6 months. So 6 months, they are supposed to get confirmed. So what we do is we extend it by a month initially to see whether they are able to do or not. Depends on what the case is. Say sometimes it's a skill issue, okay, which you can teach.
Correct.
So we feel that we can work on the person and they'll be able to come out of it. There are a lot of people who come out of it and then we confirm them. It gets delayed by a month, but we still confirm them. Sometimes it's a will issue. Okay, mostly when you hire people who are like recent pass outs or like freshers or let's not even go there.
Gen Z.
So, or people with 1 year experience, they feel that, they are still in
The
that college mode. They feel they've enrolled for some coaching classes and we are responsible for their careers. So you have to show them the door. Maybe and sometimes I think I've also seen that the people who come with, responsibility on their shoulders, they take it really very seriously. Okay, they may not be good with the process, but then they take it seriously and you see the effort. So you are like, even if they're not there, 60-70% they are there, you're okay, you go ahead with it. Because your team consists of people who are really good with their work. And there are people who may not be excellent, but they're really good people. And you want them because that's how the team works. It's a combination of both. I always prefer that combination. There's some people who want to stand by me. That means if I have any urgence, if I need my people to do something, these excellents will throw tantrums and they'll give 100 excuses. But these people will stand by me. And I've seen them. There's some people who have worked with me for like 10 years. They're not really very good, but they're good people. And I love working with such people. So
I think, Dimple, also you can add on to this particular point about transparency as well. So transparency, first of all, plays a very important role as such, even like during hiring as well, and at the same time during your performance reviews as well. So when it comes to transparency, what exactly are you guys, giving information, like from an HR point of view? How can you, be more transparent, or what all things you would be okay to say that, okay, these are the things
just
that
to
you,
add what Johnny was saying. For example, I have inputted my self-assessment into the system. And I was hoping that you will review it and you will give me feedback. So this is the constructive feedback I'm expecting. But it's like we wait for the certain period, and after that, directly the rating and the performance bonus or the percentage is declared. And after that, we're having this conversation. I was hoping maybe we have it earlier, so there's a window for me to change that. But it's not there.
So on that part, it is really subjective to organization, and it actually practically differs also. And it differs from organization to organization. It differs from managers to manager. Some people really believe in following the process and, giving that career development to their own people. And others over here, they may be dictative, so to say, and that's the process they follow. In this whole scenario, transparency, may or may not be there all the time. And yeah, that's how it works in different organizations. So this particular matter is also pretty subjective to companies and managers both.
Because the feedback is verbal.
The feedback is verbal, that's one. They have to add comments, etc. And more or less, these comments are just two-liners. Again, these are there. I mean, comments, etc. are there. So the transparency is limited to that comment. So that's how it works. You can share your experience, Jess.
yeah, I think for me, what I've seen is, so there is a process, okay, where people update the comments and, they write what they have done during the year. They may also write, for example, I prefer to have regular check-ins, okay? So while I may have disagreed with them, they'll still write it at the end of the year because they think that they did that and they'll stick by it. Okay. I also know people who don't have any conversation during the year. Okay. And they really just want to avoid the performance discussion because, you can avoid it during the year, but at the end of the day, then you have to sit and have the conversation. People have arguments and fights. It's very normal during appraisal process. Okay. I feel ideally you need to have very clear conversations. So for example, for me, it's very clear. I'm going to tell you 3 things that you need to achieve. And the conversation sticks around those 3 points because I document and write everything down. Okay. It has become easier because now you have Zoom meetings, you have AI summary, everything gets summarized. So you don't really have to waste your time writing anything. So my end of the discussion is mostly summary of whatever we have discussed, whether you have done or not. By 3rd quarter, See, the rate for us, mostly, I think most of the organization rating gets freezed by 3rd quarter. So if someone has not achieved and they're not 80% there, that means you're not going to achieve it this year. So I prefer telling them at that point of time because for me, year-end conversations are not about talking about failures, okay? So you're done. And in my mind, I start rating people that this is where you stand, this is where you're not standing. And for me, if I have to rate you today, this is where you stand. So that there's no last minute surprise as such. Okay. But I know there are people who don't do that, because I know the moment I tell this person that he's not good, he's going to blast. Let me have this conversation at the end of the year, or let me add my manager so that I have some support. See, I have been a victim of that also, where someone, thought that it also depends on the nature of the person with whom you're sitting for conversation. If someone is my reportee is introvert, I will be all over the person, okay? But if they are extrovert, I might also bring a support, okay, to control or to tame the person. And that has happened with me where people have gone somewhere. So I think finding a good manager in an organization also depends on your luck, because you can't dictate, right? Just like you can't decide who your parents are going to be. Similarly with your managers, you can't decide. You can get the best.
This brings me to another question: is that does favoritism or something in that line, does it affect a lot?
Because you just mentioned that you are bringing, for an extrovert person, you're bringing some third person in.
I don't bring, because I feel I can give feedback, okay? It doesn't I do not really add a lot of emotions to that conversation. But I have been in conversation where someone has got someone,
Correct.
as a support to deal with me, okay, and give me feedback and to manage the reaction. Favoritism, if you're talking about favoritism, I think that's a very normal thing. It's a very normalized thing. And it is always there in the back of your mind when you're giving. See, maybe there are organizations where you have a lot of people. So you go through that process of, going through the productivity scores and accuracy scores, doing the calculation, adding the maths and coming up with rating. And then still, that rating will give you some decimal, 3.2, 3.7. Now, whether that 3.7 will be 4 or 3 depends. That's favoritism.
Correct.
Okay. They may say there is math.
Yeah.
But how you turn it is, like, for example, if I know that the person is really good and they've shown effort, it can be for me effort, and for the other person who's not got it, favoritism. Okay. And I think as long as you have human beings who are doing this process, favoritism is always going to be there. It's not always about the work, right? It's also my experience working with this individual.
Because numbers will talk about the quantity of output, but at the end of the day, the other things that matter is that, okay, why you are a favorite of a certain manager. Like for my parents, there is, or for a lot of there is always this favorite sibling, because there is an appeal, right? So from an employee perspective, there would be an appeal. So that's it.
So I think favoritism also has another element. Okay. Favoritism can mean that someone is going to give me good rating. Okay. Which will translate into an appreciation. Okay. But appreciation may or may not translate into monetary benefit, right? You're just appreciating me in front of 10 people and saying that I'm the next star or whatever. But when it comes to rating, your increment and bonus is something that translates into money. So it depends on, as an individual, what are you looking for?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's promotion. Okay. I may be the star performer, may not get good rating, but I can still get the promotion. Okay. So I have also worked with people who gave me appreciation like anything. Okay. But never gave me ratings. So there was no monetary benefit attached to it. If you're naive, you may not realize, you may be happy that, sometimes when you, with that middle class background, you have this thing that, whatever you get, you be happy that, I at least got this much. Others are not even getting.
You say it's like it's one of the best practices and one of the cheapest way for an organization to keep their performing employees
motivated.
I think it's not even organization. I don't think they are even aware that all this is happening, right? This is your reporting managers, people who join this organization and then they create this culture, okay? That they want to get the work out of this person. Just find out that, for example, if there are 2 individuals in my team, one will always demand for money. So I will give the money, and the other just needs appreciation. So I'll give the appreciation. It's the way you manipulate the system and figure out, because ultimately you have to manage the pot and increment and all, right? You can't give it to everyone. So I'll figure out what I need to give it each. One, I will just give maybe rosy talks. The other one, maybe increment. And the other one just maybe, line them up for next promotion or something like that, whatever works. I think that has also been normalized over a period of time.
But in true sense, like we just spoke about the benefits, like of the work. So, in true sense, who wins? Like, is it the employees, is it the managers, is it the company, is it the HR? Like, who is getting more out of it? Like, in this process, like if you sort of save money by on appraisal, so how is it translating into sort of who will win this whole argument of performance review? May say, for example, if you say, okay, I gave this performance review, I gave this number, and at the end of the day, you save some money. Okay. But how is it actually translating into success for an organization? Or
See, I feel organization is never asking for money back. There's no money back scheme for them. Once they allocate a pot, that this is your increment pot or this is your bonus pot, they have allocated. Now it's up to you how you want to spend it among your people.
correct.
Now, how it works is when we get the pot, then it's our responsibility. Let's say I have 500 people in my team, then I have to sit and I have 4 people under me. I'll give them 125 each so that they can split and divide. Then ideally, the entire pot is supposed to be allocated to people. And what may happen is that I may not give it to A and might give it to B. Okay, so B is benefiting. A is not benefiting. I know A, I can just send them well done and give them 10,000 less and add the 10,000 to B because B may not agree just with well done. They may need that additional and tell them that, you would have ideally got only maybe 1,000, but I'm giving you 11,000 and, remember this.
fought with
All
the
that happens,
management for that
remember,
numbers.
yeah. But I have gone out of the way. You have no idea how many fights I've fought for you. Okay. No one was ready, but I did it for you. This is only for you. You may get sometimes, see, I've got good ratings. Okay. But my increment has been subpar because they thought that they've given me good rating, right? But they could not get me money. So after a point of time, when you have conversation with people, you realize that, they've been fooling you. What am I going to do with the ratings? Where am I going to hang all those certificates if it's not translating into my CTC? Because when you walk out of the organization, that is the only thing that matters, right? Everyone is going to give you increment on that figure. So that conversation matters. Sometimes I think it's also about the bonus. Sometimes people will just give you bonus because it's a one-time thing, may not give you increment because increment increases the cost to the company or they might want to give it to someone else. But I, being selfish, I always prefer CTC over bonus because if I get good bonus this year, that may not guarantee next year. But if my salary increases this year, whatever I get next year will be based as this increased salary. So you really need to understand all these elements, which I think with social media and all, people with you hear so many people and experts talking, so you know all this. But back in those days, we never had any idea that we just accepted whatever was given to us, thinking that this is how it works. It doesn't.
I think in my first job, I remember somebody told me, dude, appraisal ho gaya tera. And your appraisal is done. I'm like, did you get the rating and all? Did you check the system? Like, what appraisal? What rating? And it's almost March. You should know that. I'm like, what? Nobody spoke to me. And then when I opened the system and they're like, oh, there is a rating over there and something has happened. And my manager has not had that conversation. But that was like way back in 2010, I remember. And I was like, wow, this happened and I didn't have any idea. And it has now evolved a lot. Okay. But I think the old times were very harsh. Like you grew and you didn't even know how you were supposed to grow, or you worked. Sorry, I used the wrong word. I think I should say you worked, but you don't know you grew. And now here, these times we have more woke. I think.
Yeah.
I think the term would be woke.
Because the managers like Jess, they are like quite clear with the expectations and the goal setting. So previously, I think during the start of my career, that used to not happen. And speaking of like the ratings, and what if someone is allocated a lower rating and if they push back? So how do you manage that conflict?
The conflict management.
So I think what happens, conflict happens only when there's no clear conversation during the year. Or there's a conversation, but the conversation is never closed. That means during the year, we're sitting for discussion and you may say that I haven't done this, or there were 5 things assigned to me and I never completed it. and the person may not, agree to it. So you're like, okay, let's talk about it, and maybe tomorrow, next day, whatever, and the conversation is never closed. That's when you sit for appraisal discussion, you will see people are not happy. There have been scenarios where they get frustrated at times that there was no clear feedback given during the year, and managers try to assure them that maybe we'll be much more clearer next year. Okay. And people, I think it also depends on the individual. They may feel that they don't want to pick a fight unnecessarily. There's politics, okay? They don't want to pick a fight unnecessarily. There are sometimes it may happen that we have to loop in HR, because if the conversation is not closed, we loop in HR and then they hear both sides of the story, and then they give their judgment as to what exactly has happened. Because ultimately, there was a time when we required that closure from the individual, okay? That means they have to go on the system and write, I agree. Because if they say decline, then it used to trigger a lot of email throughout the leadership and world, because our system is works centralized. So the name reflects in the report. But over a period of time, they've changed the system. Even if you don't agree, it gets approved automatically, okay, after a certain point of time.
Seriously?
So yes, it happens. If you're not there, then the conversation, okay, will on the particular day, till the time everything is not closed on the system, increment and bonus amount is not released. So it will get approved. So the conversation can continue. If you're not happy, you will start looking for a job, or we might just bury it and carry on with life. Or sometimes you just get busy with life, so you don't pick that conversation again. So, or you apply for IJP or move on in life. See, I think it is also okay sometimes to act like this. Work cannot be your life, okay? There are some people who take it very, very seriously and, go into depression, and it impacts their mental health and all. But not every time people are going to agree with you. And you should really need to have that kind of maturity, be it your family or your office, your friends will have a different opinion and may not agree with you. Every year is not going to be your year. You will have years when you will genuinely not perform well, but may not agree to it. Or you would have done well, but the other person is not agreeing to whatever politics, favoritism, whatever it is. But I think you will have to learn to deal with it.
Yes.
Because if you get burnt, or if you allow it to impact you, then you will not be able to move on. You will have to be selfish and prioritize yourself over everything else. That it's okay. Let it be. Maybe I will be clever next year and document everything. For me, documenting is the key. That I said this and you said this. So there's no going back. So for me, when I sit for discussion, I get very frustrated when someone tells me, okay, tell me how your year was. I can be as blunt as telling them that, you don't know what I did and what are we sitting here to discuss.
I think preparing the employee makes a lot of difference. If you can add some pointers. So from your perspective, how would you prepare the employee first before, giving them the...
Maybe a trailer before the movie release.
I think
like
would
give them
that
a
be
gist
helpful?
about
That
the
is
feedback.
what
or
quarterly
something.
reviews are for. Because from there they already know quarterly reviews, monthly check-ins. From there they
Or
already know
at least
that where they stand.
We also train our managers in terms of how they are supposed to conduct the one-to-ones or performance discussion. Okay. Ideally, it is not just about talking about failures.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
When you're working with people, there's always things or positive things that you can start with. Okay. Of the things that they've done really well, the support that they've provided during the year, things that they even if it's not exceptionally good, you can still point out those things. And then you can talk about areas where I think sometimes for me, I feel it's about how you present. Okay. If you're talking about things I haven't done, for me, that's negative. If you're talking about things that you want me to work in future, it may mean the same thing, but I think it's about how you word it. Okay. When you talk about things I haven't done, that means you think that I don't have the capability. So you point out that you haven't done these things. But when you say things that I need to work in future, that means you believe in me and you want me to work.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of difference. The tone of the conversation. I've seen people, who are like very well prepared in their mind that my appraisal is not going to go well, so I'm going to just give it back. But when the conversation is like this, they feel that there's no negative intent. You want the person to improve, and you're ready to provide the support. They tone down, and it really goes well from there.
I think there is, from the whole conversation, I understand that there would be some kind of a moral dilemma. Like you would have, certain business goal conflicts with the employee, and there would be obviously some effect to well-being, burnout, or mental health. So how would you handle that sort of
you
situation?
mentioned about having some loyal subordinates in your team, and they are your allies, and they are like there for you in case there is an emergency demand of work. And you also mentioned about like the work is not everything. You don't to invest too much in it or get depressed. But in that case, for example, if there is a conflict that you need to achieve the business goal, and the person in your ally is not keeping well, how do you handle this conflict between the burnout or mental health?
Also, one more additional question to both of you, like in your line of work, you have seen small organizations, you've seen big organizations. How much of that change has happened towards, oh, that person is getting affected or not? So in the most oldest or probably the most newest organizations that you've worked,
We're not talking about wellness programs.
so we're just saying that the effectiveness of, they understand this particular situation.
See, I think it differs from organization to organization, okay, and the deliverables that is there. Okay, that also differs from team to team. There are teams who may work on very stringent deadlines, but if they do not really have enough resource, okay, if they haven't hired, they will always have shortage. Okay, and then they'll burn their team members and tell them to sit extra, cover up for things and all that, which I feel is management fault. You need to do clear assessment in terms of seeing how many resources are required. Sometimes you just because you want to please your higher management, you end up committing a lot more than you can deliver, which should not happen, which is because ultimately then the pressure is going to be on individuals who do the actual work. As a manager, you don't really have to do the actual work. You're just going to say, okay, who's going to do it, and figure out the next person who's going to do it, move the file, allocate, and all those jazz. But the actual work is done by people below. So managers at times can be really very dumb or selfish, okay? And just because they want some brownie point, they might not hire people. There are also teams where you do not really have a lot of work. You have enough work for people to do. For example, in my team, we have enough work, okay? So something as silly or as simple as someone not keeping well, people going on maternity is not going to impact my team to that extent for it to lead to mental health. Sometimes I also feel it's managers who can act really funny. For example, I feel when it comes to leaves, be it sick leave or casual leave or earned leave, whatever name you want to give, it is people's right to take those leaves. Okay. That means if someone tells me that they're not well and they're taking sick leave, they're not well. Or for example, when it comes to paid leave or whatever long leaves that people take, you don't have to give me reason why you want the leave. It's your leave. Okay. You apply in advance, you get prioritized. The discussion happens only when there are 2 or 3 people who might end up at this last moment. Okay, then there's a discussion. I've always kept it very clear that if you have people who cover your work in your absence, you need to manage your leaves amongst yourselves. That means you have discussion if there is a conflict. I am not going to sit and decide that whether going to Singapore is important or Malaysia. You need to do that decision and come and tell me who is going to apply. Both can't take leave together because the work is going to get impacted. But it also happens that at last moment, you have people who call sick or they have emergency and we let them be. There are days when, for example, now I work for multinational company. We have for example, our festivals when it starts June till Diwali, there are so many times when people are not available. And see, I feel that you will have to
Juggle and
balance,
manage.
okay? That the people who prefer that others have, we do not really have fixed leaves during Ganesh Chaturthi or Diwali and all. We have to opt for it, okay? At times, my entire team opts for it, or there are few people who are available. We always have this discussion, but we allow, sometimes we only have 2 or 3 people to cover the work. And that is okay. Then they come and cover the work the next day. I don't really believe there are people who create a scene that it should not happen. You have to be there. I worked with managers who have never been okay with this setup, okay? Made us work during Diwali or maybe a holy kind of a festival. That has happened. But when I, moved to leadership and I realized that it's not really required. I think my outlook towards all these things also changed when I traveled. Okay, I've spent times with UK and I've seen their way of working or to other parts of the world where how very clearly people have balance their work-life balance. Okay. Once they're out of work, they're out of work. They don't keep on checking their emails and works. That means if they're on leave, then they're on leave. They're not going to keep on checking their emails. So I think if we want to reach there, then we have to make all these small changes. Okay, so that is my personal decision that I don't ask people reason for their leave. It's your leave, do whatever. I tell them that for example, if they want to finish a series on Netflix, they can do it. They don't have to tell me what they are doing. I'm not really interested. I don't even, sometimes when people send me a message, I say, okay, even when before they, sometimes people send their blood report and whatever nonsense just because they think that it will, convince me. But people don't realize that these are personal information that you're not supposed to share.
Correct.
Okay. And your managers are not supposed to ask you all this information. Me telling you that I'm not well is enough. Okay. Unless, sometimes you want to go for 6 months or 3 months medicated leave or something like that. And there's leave without pay and there's leave gifting that comes into picture. Then you provide all those details. Otherwise, it's not really required. So I think just to conclude, all this mental health issues sometimes it may be because of lack of planning from management, okay? Or sometimes because the people you've hired are not productive. They're not doing the work. See, just the other day, I think I saw some reel on Instagram, okay? When the reel starts, you feel that the manager is bad because the people are working during their lunch hours and all that. But at the end of it, you realize that the manager is good, but the people who keep on wasting the time, and so they have to make them work even during lunch hours because they're not productive enough. So it differs from team to team and organization to organization.
Yes, I think a lot, and I think a little bit about the employees as well, that people, when you enter into an organization, it is not only the job of the manager, even you also have to ensure that you know the whole process of how the performance appraisal starts. Be it you joined 3 months prior to the performance appraisal or 1 year or 6 months into the organization, you have to know what are the parts of your performance appraisal. Have a discussion with your manager openly. At least have that one conversation before you tell them, no, you are evil. You have to have that conversation. I think majority of the newbies who go into the organizations, I think they have this one problem where they don't ask these questions. They're like, okay, fine. One most burning question we ask in majority of our guest podcast is, how are you dealing with Gen Zs or the new people who are coming in the organization? What has been your experience when dealing with the new employees? Let's not say Gen Z, but the new people who are now coming into the system.
Survive them.
See, we've been through a lot of training programs, okay, to sensitize and to learn the ways of dealing with them.
Mm-hmm.
I personally do not believe in all that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
have been through the training programs,
Yes.
not the Gen Zs.
no, yeah, exactly. See, this is what organizations do, right? That they make managers go through the training program so that they learn how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel that I'm not their parent to learn to deal with them. Their parents need to do that. Okay. When you're joining the organization, you're joining here. This is not, I am very clear in terms of this is not a coaching classes. So I'm not training you to become something. This is, you're coming here, you're getting paid. I'm coming here and I'm getting paid. So we are here for common purpose. So you will be treated like everyone else. And I think this is where it all stems from, right? That you want the need to be treated differently. And I'm personally very against it. That no one, for whatever reason, should be treated differently. All of us are same. Okay. I started working immediately after my graduation, even when my results were not out. Okay. I've done the work even while I was working, while I was in my college. No one treated me differently. You learn over a period of time, and that's how it should be. Whether you're Gen Z or whatever generation, it doesn't really matter, right? Ultimately, okay, I think people need to be matured enough to understand that you're here to do the work and this is serious. This is not some game or whatever. this is some serious business and someone's money is involved. They are trusting us with their work, especially for us. See, we're not working for, Indian clients and all. We're working for multinational company. People have trusted. If we run after keeping see, it's important that you need to take care of your employees, okay, your team members, because you are at the end of the day working with human beings. So all that emotional element, people appreciating them, all that is required, but it has to be done irrespective of the generation that you're part of.
Correct.
Okay, I treat everyone equally. I don't even bother. For me, once you step inside the organization, all of the things that people talk about nowadays, which gets a lot of importance, ideally should not matter. For example, if I am interviewing a candidate, I am not supposed to ask whether they are married or not. Okay, because it should not matter. Or what you like, dislike, your preference, your political affiliations, nothing should matter. What matters within the organization is your skill set and your performance. So everything should revolve around it. And anytime people talk about anything else, you should just shut them up and tell them that this is what matters and nothing else. But the harsh reality is sometimes I think even organizations tend to be woke and they want to sound cool, that they are doing all this for the organization so that they attract. I don't know why they want to attract. If people are really going after this, then maybe they're not meant for this industry. They're meant for some other industry and let them go. See, something as basic as just to attract this new generation, earlier we used to have, a dress code for office that you need to wear formals. And I think by default, some sort of seriousness comes with it, the way you dress up in organizations and come to office. Now you see people walking in, chappals and slippers in office, and how are they going to work? Okay, with colored hair. I don't know. Maybe in some industry it works. Okay, it differs from where you're going. I think you need to dress up. Your dressing should match where you're going. You're not going to enter a temple and wear some jazzy clothes or a club wearing tradition. You don't do that, right? You decide. You know where you're stepping and then you dress accordingly.
Yeah.
So similarly, people will also have to change. Why would organization want to change? I don't understand, but they are changing. Unfortunately,
I think there is a generation where the organization makes them feel that, oh, if you are comfortably dressed, then you can come here also, because that comfort is here as well. So they're making that environment here. But at the end of the day, I don't know why organizations shift to it. They have to have that kind of seriousness as well. So
and then they struggle and give feedback on their dressing during performance. That's what happens, right? Because then if you have nothing to talk about, then you tell them that see the way you dress, so it doesn't look professional. So
and it has been a really awesome conversation with Jess and Dimple here. And if listeners would like to leave some comments, or if they want to understand something, or if they have any queries, they can always reach out to us on our channels. And now we're on Substack as well, so you can leave a comment on Substack as well for us. So thank you for having this conversation with us, Jess and Dimple. It was nice having you here, and probably let's see if we can have these interesting conversations in future as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.